was hired to be an anchor and reporter at Channel 34 in Los Angeles many, many years ago. And I had no experience in television. I had no experience in journalism, but I took the chance. Never in a million years would I have imagined that that journey that I began back in 1981 would lead me to be an award-winning journalist or lead me to be the longest-running female network anchor in the country. All I wanted to do really is work and grow and learn. I wanted to do my job to the best of my abilities. I wanted to work for my community. I wanted to represent my community. I definitely had the drive to work, but before doing that, I needed to overcome some obstacles. Learning a profession in which I had no experience, being a woman in a man's world, especially being a woman in Spanish language media, and not allowing the fear of the unknown to stop me. You know, we all face some kind of bump in the road in our lives. Very few people get an easy ride, but there's no worse obstacle than the one that we have in our head. You know, that voice that tells us you can't, you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you are not ready for this, you might fail. All of us have heard it at one point in our lives, and we have the choice to either listen to it and deprive ourselves of what could have been, or ignore it and take the chance. I came from radio. I had studied marketing. Being in front of the camera was not my thing back then, and to top it off, I was kind of shy. The first 2 weeks of my TV job, I couldn't be on the air because I got laryngitis. You know, that's a medical term for being petrified. So when I finally started reporting, it took me a year before I could raise my hand and begin to ask questions. So I went back to school. I took broadcast journalism courses on nights and weekends. And in the meantime, I would watch the stories from other reporters that were there at those press conferences to compare my stories to theirs. And when I realized that they were asking the same questions that I wanted to ask, I started raising my hand, and I haven't stopped asking questions since. You know, there were a few things that helped me to overcome those challenges. One is a rule that I have followed all of my life, which is don't be a conformist and don't allow yourself to be mediocre. I wanted to do a good job. Just when you think of it, there were thousands and eventually millions of people that would be watching and judging. But soon after, I realized there was something much, much bigger than me. The incredible responsibility that I had in informing the growing Spanish-speaking community in the city where I was born and where I was raised. I needed to tell their stories. I felt that I needed to give them the tools that they needed to survive and make it in what to many was their newly adopted country. Back in Los Angeles of the early 1980s, there were many people in the Hispanic community who felt disenfranchised from mainstream America. There was a sort of cultural and language divide that I felt that I could bridge. I felt that there was so much information that they depended on that I would have to give them. They needed a voice to help guide them and also to speak on their behalf. And so I became passionate about empowering the community that I was representing, that I was informing, and that I was also a part of. And that is what became my life's mission. So I've never really been afraid to work per se. You know, I come from a working class family of Mexican immigrants with a very strong work ethic. My mother was a seamstress, and so at age of 14, I got my first job in the factory where she was working, clipping threads, believe it or not. I needed to work because I needed to help my parents pay the rent and pay for my school and my expenses. That was something very important to me, the need to work. And Latinas will tell you that when you come from a family of strong, independent mothers and abuelitas, it gives you a kind of superpower. But still, women have to work twice as hard as their male counterparts to get half of their recognition. And in Spanish language media, sometimes you have to work 3 times as hard to get 1/3 of the recognition. So as women, not only do we have to work to balance our personal life and our family life with our profession, and as journalists to get the story, get the facts right, and make it relevant, but we constantly have to fight for equality, to be treated as an equal, to be recognized as an equal, to be compensated as an equal. And for women of color, the inequality in the workplace is even greater. I'm sure a lot of you have heard that women make 80 cents to every dollar a man makes. But did you know that African American women make 64 cents to every man that a dollar makes? For every dollar that a man makes? And for Latinas, it's 56 cents to every man's dollar. Well, unfortunately, we have been seeing the headlines, and we realize that sexual abuse has been something that has been talked about quite a bit. And I really commend the women who have spoken out and who have told their stories. And because of it, I think that there's so many other women now that will not be afraid to tell their stories. And also, hopefully, there will be men who realize that they can't get away with it anymore. But sexual abuse isn't the only kind of abuse. There's abuse of power, discrimination, favoritism, inequality, intimidation. Sometimes it's subtle, and sometimes it's overt. For instance, I remember many, many years ago when I considered making a transition into English language media, there was a local station who was looking for a Latina reporter, and I thought that would be the perfect opportunity for me to report on the undercovered Latino community for an English language audience. I didn't get the job because one of the executives said that I didn't look ethnic enough, yet I sounded ethnic, and that my accent would be insulting to their audience. That was interesting because there was someone with a British accent working at that station. Then there was a time early on in my career when I was told that I couldn't cover a natural disaster in Central America because it would be too difficult for me to walk in heels and get my hair done. And then there was another time where I was told that I couldn't cover a war in the Middle East because in their culture, women faced limitations and I would not be able to do my job correctly. And then there was a time when I was excluded from participating in a political show because now there were more men available to do it and to host a show. So what do you do when you see your role attempt to be diminished? Well, you can complain about it, but unfortunately, we still live in a world where if a man complains, things get fixed. But if a woman complains, then you're considered problematic and you're blacklisted. And it's very unfortunate when that happens because then you have so many limitations when you're blacklisted. And what is it that you're supposed to do? What you cannot do is allow it to intimidate you, allow it to paralyze you, or let it become a distraction. You just raise your hand and not only say that I'm here, but prove that you can do the work just as well as any man can. I've seen a lot of female colleagues in my profession with remarkable knowledge and leadership abilities and be elevated into mid-management positions where their expertise is used and acknowledged, but just not enough to make it to the top decision-making positions. Because in a sexist society, those jobs for journalists, the top jobs, are too often reserved for men. But I do see that changing in the near future, even if it's baby steps at a time, because of strong women who rise above the obstacles and get the job done. I've had an amazing career in Spanish language media, and I say I had because just a few months ago, I made a major life decision. I decided that it was time for me to reinvent myself and become an independent journalist and producer. It was not an easy decision to get out of my comfort zone and become self-employed after more than 3 decades. Did I have doubts about starting over again and leaving it all behind? Maybe, but I prepared myself. I evoked that rookie journalist who had the drive to work and learn and grow, determined not to be a conformist. I remembered how I overcame the fear of raising my hand and asking questions and how I confronted those inequalities that I faced because of my gender in the beginning of my career. And I told myself, you can do this. But once again, coming full circle, I realized that there was something bigger than me and more important than me and my desire to reinvent myself at stake here. And that was my life's mission, to empower the Latino community. I realized that their challenges have become greater in the current political climate, and that now more than ever, perhaps they need voices to help guide them and to give them the tools that they need to survive and to make it and to speak on their behalf. And so I'm committed to continuing to tell their stories to whoever will listen in whatever forum there is available for me. Because as long as I have a voice, I will continue to use it on their behalf. Now their challenges have become my challenges. And like I've done before, I'm ready to take the chance. It's never too late. Thank you.